like they have like a little street market going on. Look at the size of those eggplants.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. This is pretty.
It is. It's nice.
Right? Imagine living in that building with all those windows.
Yeah, right?
That'd be nice. Or these buildings, those have nice windows too. Yo, have you ever seen so many squirrels before in your life? Look at them. Oh my god, look at this one.
It's fat.
I know, he's gonna say he's a big squirrel. They're all fat. Oh my god, I've never seen such fat squirrels before. So we're here in what's it called?
Common.
Boston Common for a Freedom Trail. We got to print our tickets. Remember I said we were having trouble? Trouble no more. And it's really cute. They have, so hold on. So this is like the little, I guess, town hall.
Center.
Yeah, I just bought a sweater for $20, which is not bad because New York would have charged me a whole bunch more. That man is gonna be our tour guide. Do you see him? Hashtag we love a patriot. Yeah, this is really pretty. There's a Christmas tree. Our Uber driver said they lit it last Friday, I believe he said.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
And Dolly Parton was here. He was like, bro, what? So, yeah, it's really nice. And the weather's not that bad. Hold on, I'm not focused. Look, they got a playground here with adults on it. It's totally fine. And now we have an ice rink. You think they say department?
I'm sure some of them do.
So we're heading to our tour. Starts in like 5 minutes. These squirrels here are like so freaking domesticated and we coming up to people who feed them, and they're fat too. You ever seen a fat squirrel before?
Not me.
Right? They're pretty overweight. So you want to like sit somewhere?
We got 5 minutes.
Oh wait, we got 5
Let's
minutes.
wait.
I want to sit. Look, there's a bench over here.
That's our Capitol building, the Massachusetts State House. It was built between 1795 and 1798, despite the fact the building is more than 200 years old. When the building was first constructed, it just consisted of the middle brick section there. It wasn't expanded on either side to the back until many years afterwards. It has always featured a large prominent dome. Originally, the dome on top of the State House was just covered in plain wooden shingles. It was a bit leaky on rainy days. So in 1802, sheets of copper were laid over the very top of it. Interestingly enough, the copper used for the Massachusetts State House dome was provided by Paul Revere's copper rolling mill. He was among the very first to successfully produce rolling copper at his mill in Canton, Massachusetts. My Country 'Tis of Thee, that song was performed for the very first time on the front steps of this church on July 4th, 1831. Birds building called a granary that could hold up to 12,000 bushels of grain for Boston. That is why this burying ground next to the church is called the Old Granary Burying Ground. That was the biggest landmark in those days. With that said, we'll make our way into that burying ground and talk more about who's buried there.
So this brick path here is the path of the Freedom Trail. Pretty interesting. And the tour doesn't cover the whole path. So like if you want to do the tour, like the entire tour on your own, you can just follow the trail and it brings you to more historic areas that the tour doesn't cover.
Back to 1660, it is Boston's third oldest burying ground and arguably its most famous. You're looking out at approximately 2,300 grave markers, although most historians estimate as many as 5,000 people are buried here. Some of the patriots buried here include John Hancock, Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, the victims of the Boston Massacre.
Oh, wow.
Of course, in the middle of the burying ground, you have a large grave marker that says Franklin. Not the burial place of Benjamin Franklin, but it is the burial place of his parents, Josiah and Abiah Franklin. Oftentimes, when we're thinking of John Hancock's signature, we're thinking of the one that he put on the Declaration of Independence in July of 1776, the document that officially severed ties between the American colonies and the British Empire. the largest, most elegant signature on that document definitely belongs to this guy, John Hancock, of Mr. Paul Revere, probably the most popularly visited grave at the old granary. I also wanted to point out Revere's birth year and death year. He was born in 1734, passes in 1818, 84 and a half years of age, pretty long lifespan given the period that he was living in. He also lived to have a total of 16 children throughout the course of his life, so he certainly stayed busy. Above all else, Revere's most famous night is his midnight ride that he goes on the night of April 18th, 1775. What's worth mentioning about that night, though, is that it was not something Revere was famous for during his lifetime. It wasn't until more than 80 years later, when Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote the famous poem about it that all of us have had to memorize in schools, that people really outside of Boston know who Paul Revere is. Were it not for that poem, it's a high likelihood we wouldn't be spending much time about Revere today. Both of those men climbed the highest window of the steeple of the Old North, lit those lanterns with flint and steel, and then held them out the windows facing towards Charlestown for about 60 seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but really it was all the time that they needed. Revere would show up in Charlestown about an hour later, at which point he's told the lights had been seen and the men have started riding. He borrows a horse in Charlestown, begins a famous ride of his own towards Lexington and Concord, warning other Minutemen and militiamen along the way that British soldiers are approaching. And from a young age, Adams' aspiration was to work in politics. It's really what he was best at. He served Boston as an assemblyman. He served Boston as a tax collector, somewhat ironic, although he was a very popular tax collector because he didn't collect the taxes of his friends. Gains himself some popularity. That helps him out with his successes as the Revolution's key political organizer. If John Hancock is the wa of the Revolution, if Paul Revere is the messenger, Sam Adams is the PR guy. Very good at raising awareness for the cause of the American Revolution and getting people to take action for it.
It's a pretty building. You can go inside too.
Looks like it.
Old City Hall.
This is Ben Franklin statue.
Where? Oh, there he is.
Patriot, diplomat, and scientist, signer of the Declaration of Independence, the Treaty of Paris, the Constitution, born here in Boston, of course. This is the oldest public statue in Boston, put here in 1856. One of my favorite attributes about this sculpture is that depending on which side of it you're standing on, you can see two slightly different expressions on Franklin's face. One side shows the more serious, contemplative Ben Franklin. The other side shows the more lighthearted, jovial, humorous Franklin, a deliberate move on the part of the sculptor. Behind us as well, we have Boston's Old City Hall, originally constructed in 1865 and used as Boston City Hall until 1969. It was built in the Second Empire design of architecture. I point this out because at the end of the tour, I'll show you Boston's new City Hall, a building many refer to as the ugliest building in the city of Boston. What patriots are protesting that year is the combination of this new law, the Tea Act, and a tax on tea that they have been paying since the late 1760s. In the fall of that year, 3 large ships, the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver, dock over at Griffin's Wharf in Boston Harbor, carrying more than 30 tons of this East India Company tea, and patriots want to prevent this tea from being unloaded, taxed, and sold in Boston at all costs. They plead with the Synod Governor, Thomas Hutchinson, to send these 3 ships back to England. Hutchinson, being a loyal, royally appointed governor, adamantly refused the Patriots' request. So, several meetings were held both at Faneuil Hall, and when Faneuil Hall could no longer accommodate the growing crowd size, here at the Old South Meeting House to protest. The most famous meeting took place on December 16th of that year, about 3 days from now, when more than 5,000 people managed to cram themselves into that building there. It was no larger than you see today, so you can imagine it was a very crowded place to be that night. Sam Adams was the one to address the crowd. He told them that once again Thomas Hutchinson had refused to send these ships back to England. He famously concluded his remarks by saying, "There is nothing more this meeting could do to save our country." Later that evening, members of the Sons of Liberty and other patriots, some disguised as Native Americans, made their way down to Griffin's Wharf. They boarded those 3 ships, where they proceeded to destroy 342 chests of English tea, sweeping it all off the decks of the ship into Boston Harbor, essentially creating a giant teapot out of Boston Harbor. And as a result, the cost of damage ends up amounting to around $1.7 million.
Wow.
British Parliament is greatly infuriated by this, and after this they pass another series of laws, these stricter than any they passed before. They call them the Coercive Acts. The Patriots adopt a nickname for them. They call them the Intolerable Acts. The Boston Tea Party is really the straw that breaks the camel's back in the run-up to the war for American independence. State House, the previous seat of Massachusetts colonial government, built in 1713, making it the second oldest public building in the nation. Now, this was built many years before the American Revolution, at a time when the British Empire was very much still the ruling power. There's still evidence of this on top of the building. If you look toward the top, you see a statue of a lion, a statue of a unicorn. These are symbols of English rule. It was from that balcony there that the Declaration of Independence was read for the very first time publicly in the city of Boston on July 18th, 1776. A few people were so inspired by the reading, you could say, they went so far as to scale the building, tear down those lion and unicorn sculptures, and then burn them in a pit on the side of the intersection. Those are 19th century replicas to show you what it looked like before they did that in 1776. The Boston Massacre takes place 3 years before the Tea Party, 5 years before the war, so we're moving backwards in time just a little bit. During that time, Boston was occupied by around 2,000 British soldiers. On that fateful night, March 5th, 1770, one of those British soldiers, Private Hugh White, was standing guard outside the Customs House where the Bank of America now stands today. Accompanying him was another off-duty officer with the name of Captain Goldfinch. After these men assumed their posts, a young man, a wig maker's apprentice, and staunch patriot named Edward Garrick comes into this intersection. He recognizes Captain Goldfinch and he accuses him of owing his master in unpaid debt. Even though Goldfinch has proven to have settled this debt, the evidence is not good enough for Garrick, and a fight breaks out between these two people. Private Hugh White intervenes. He encourages Garrick to be more respectful of the British soldier he insists on harassing, but that does no good, and a fight breaks out between those two people. That fight escalates to blows. Private Hugh White hits Garrick in the head with the end of his musket, and this proves to be a pretty bad move for White because there were many other colonists strolling through the intersection that night. On top of that, the person he just assaulted is only about 13 years old. So immediately, a crowd starts to form retaliation against what did this witness, this British soldier, do. They force him up against the Customs House, and moments later, church bells are rung. At that time, the ringing of church bells usually meant that there was a fire somewhere in town that required the Customs House. In the case of this night, it was used to draw attention to the riot that was quickly unfolding here in this intersection. Captain Thomas Preston of the 29th Regiment on foot arrived as backup with about a half a dozen or so other soldiers. And by the time he got here, the mob had nearly doubled in size. He and his soldiers pushed their way through the crowd to the steps of the Customs House, assembled themselves in a semicircle formation trying to contain them and maintain order. But if anything, that made matters worse because from that point, colonists started to throw things at British soldiers: snowballs, ice balls, rocks, pieces of wood, even taunting soldiers to fire their weapons. When this object strikes another soldier, Hugh Montgomery, in his shoulder, he falls to the ground, he stands, and he fires off his weapon. Montgomery's commanding officer approaches him and reprimands him. He says something to the effect of, "Who ordered you to fire?" saying that no call to fire had been given. But in all of the chaos and confusion, coupled with the fact that colonists themselves are shouting the word fire, subordinate soldiers believe they've been given the command to do just that, and that's exactly what they do. They fire their weapons into the crowd, the smoke clears, and if you recall from the old granary, 5 people lose their lives in the Boston Massacre. Paul Revere prints a famous political engraving that purports to show the actual events of the Boston Massacre, but it's a bit misleading. In the background of this drawing, of course, you have the old State House. That's the same building that stands there today. On one side, you see British soldiers being ordered to fire into a group of well-dressed, unarmed gentlemen, not throwing snowballs or ice balls or rocks. They're accompanied by a puppy. They're standing in front of a made-up building called Butcher's Hall. Not the most accurate depiction of the massacre, hugely influential in getting support for its cause. Is directly behind me. That is Faneuil Hall. probably the most iconic historic building in Boston. For almost 275 years, Faneuil Hall has been a constant site of public speech, debate, and protest. In the colonial era, there was a town dock that came up to the far side of the building where ships could unload their cargo and then sell them here on the ground floor of Faneuil Hall, prior to some of the major landfill projects that take place here, of course. Directly above the marketplace is a large assembly hall, known today as the Great Hall, where some of the earliest speeches and protests were had for the American Revolution. The Stamp Act was debated and protested there for the very first time. The funeral for the Boston Massacre victims, Tea Party meetings, America's very first town hall meeting took place there as well. It's for these reasons, among many others, people called the building the Cradle of Liberty. During the War of 1812, when somebody suspected another person of being a British spy, they would quiz them and ask them what is on the top of Faneuil Hall, and if they could not answer that it was a grasshopper, they know they would have found themselves a British spy. Somebody asks you what's the top of Faneuil Hall, hopefully you'll know to answer them. Directly behind Faneuil Hall, Quincy Market, a large public market built between 1824 and 1826 as the extension of the marketplace already in the ground floor of Faneuil Hall. And with that said, folks, I conclude my tour. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
We're just hanging out in Faneuil Hall. We got lots of souvenirs you could buy here. So this is the meeting hall that the tour guide was talking about. Well, it's called the Great Hall. This is a cute area. That's that City Hall building back there. They said was the ugliest building in Boston. Time for food.
What?
I said time for food. Thank you. I'm gonna get the crab cake sandwich. It's a little different because I always be getting fish and chips. I'm like dying, to be honest with you, like not getting fish and chips.
Don't get fish
That's
and
so
chips.
not me. But I can't pass up a crab cake either.
That's true. Last time you did that, you regretted it.
When I passed up what?
The crab cake eggs Benedict in Philly.
I did, but I got it when I went with Shannon to Sarah Beth's in the city.
It's good.
That was delicious, yeah. And look it up back down here. Like John Adams' Constitution. Did you see that one?
Oh my god, yes. That one's seafood.
So funny. Yeah, they're not seafood. We had a late lunch. What time is it? It's like past 4 o'clock. At this seafood place, we got a crab cake sandwich. It was actually really good. The crab cake was a little thin.
Scallops too. Really good.
Oh yeah, the scallops were wrapped in bacon. But I don't like bacon. Oh, are we going? I don't know. All right, should we go? We're crossing a line. But yeah, I don't like bacon, so I just unwrapped them. Ooh, something on my camera? No. So now we're headed back to the hotel. I don't really know what we're doing for the rest of the night. We'll see if the rain holds off, because I feel like if it starts raining, we're probably just gonna end up staying inside.
Maybe go to a bar.
Yes. We had an early start today. So, but it's been a fun day so far. Don't you think?
I do.
Yeah. Here's the Paul Revere's house. Isn't it nice? I think it's nice. I guess that's like the entrance in there.
Yeah, that's gotta be the entrance right there.
That's cool though. Look how cute this little square is. The streets in this area are really nice.
I haven't seen the more historic part of the city.
These windows kind of remind me of Diagon Alley.
Right?
Don't they?
Yeah. 3D map.
That's what it looks like.
North Square. You are here.
That's what it says?
Oh yeah, you gotta find the star on the legend. There's the star. North is this way. It's probably right in front of me.
I know.
We figured it out, guys.
We found it. We were like, oh, watch it be right in front of us.
It wasn't really. It's in the shade. It's right here.
Hey guys, so we came back to the hotel and I took a little nap. I don't know how long we've been here. I don't even know how long I slept, but I think I'm just gonna end the video here. I'm not really sure what else we're gonna do tonight or if we're just gonna stay in, but I'm super tired. So I hope you guys enjoyed just watching us hang around Boston. Tomorrow, we're going to go to New England Aquarium and see a whole bunch of aquatic animals. And I'm super excited, so I'll definitely vlog that. But yeah, so like, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.